To present to us the guest panelists for the closing of the GAP project, let me introduce you to our moderator, Captain Kenneth Hall, retired, Illinois State Police, and our facilitator, Mr. Ed from State Farm.
The purpose of this panel this morning is to bring out some information and to make you aware of things that are going on in our community and why they're important to you. Let's start with the fact that every time we have a mass casualty event, Newtown, Tucson, Arizona, Lafayette, Louisiana, you can always depend on somebody to bring up and to argue about two things. One is gun control. We're not talking about that this morning. But the other one is mental illness. We got to do something about mental illness. And what gets lost in all the rhetoric is that for as many people as we have dealing with some kind of mental health issue, they are no more represented in criminal statistics than are people from the general population. The most frequently cited statistics about the mental illness or mental health population is somewhere between 40 and 50 million people in our country dealing with these kinds of issues, the vast majority of whom are never going to shoot anybody. And we need to keep that in mind, but many of them do need services, which in all too many cases, they are not getting. Last month, the president said he wanted to commit $500 million to mental health services. And that sounds like a lot of money, on top of the approximately $480 million in federal block grants for the states for mental health services in the most recent fiscal year. It sounds like a lot of money. But due to the economic downturn following the recession, and so many states, practically everyone, cutting budgets, where do you think one of the first places they took money from was? Over $4 billion in mental health funding went down the tubes. It just wasn't appropriated. So $480 million, a lot of money. $500 million, a lot of money. Doesn't touch $4 billion. Within the last couple of weeks, the largest social service provider in this state, Lutheran Social Services, announced they were cutting 750 positions. Constitutes over 40% of their workforce. Thousands of people, not all of them dealing with mental illness, but thousands of people are not going to be getting those services. And Lutheran Social Services says those cuts are permanent. Now, why is all this important to you? Because if the federal government isn't funding what we need, and the state certainly isn't funding what we need, in order to continue to provide those services, now we're talking about you and your money much more directly. Which is why we have that 1% increase in sales tax, or one of the reasons. It gets closer and closer to home. Here in McLean County, we're doing about as good a job as can be done with the resources that we have available. We continue to try to do more. And to address those issues of what is being done now, and perhaps what we would like to see being done in terms of support and education. We've got people on this panel who deal with those issues. How do we support people who are dealing with these challenges in their daily life? How do we support and educate their family members so that they may more productively and effectively assist and help people who are dealing with these challenges on a daily basis. We also have representatives of the criminal justice system to discuss that issue of what are we doing here, and maybe how effectively or how much more effectively we can utilize the tools that we have available within the criminal justice system to address mental health concerns on a local basis. And finally, we're going to talk a little bit about advocacy. How do we advocate for change? What kind of changes are we looking for? What have we got going now, and how do we change that? Where do we want to go? We'd certainly like to be able to advocate and effectively get more money from higher levels of government, but I'm not going to pin my hopes on that. And I would suggest that you don't either. But in order to facilitate what you're going to hear this morning, I'd like to introduce Ed Quijano.
Thank you very much, Ken, for this conversation. And thank you so much for coming. It's good to see you. Look, I thought what we could do is set out maybe some ground rules for our dialogue together, just to kind of make sure that we kind of keep it in bounds, if you will. And here are some ground rules that I think will be helpful to the conversation. First of all, let's make sure that we have a respectful exchange with each other. And the reason I say it that way is that mental illness, or talking about mental illness, can be a very difficult thing to talk about. So we want to make sure that we create a safe environment here to have that kind of dialogue. Is that fair? That's the first one. The second one is that we don't always agree on the issues at play. And so it's okay to disagree, but it's not okay to be disagreeable, right? Does that make sense to you? Okay, I'm getting nods over here, that's good. And the third one is to listen as an ally, to try to put ourselves in the shoes of the person who's speaking. I think that's very important. I'm very excited to be a part of this discussion because I think this is a great picture that you see right here of the kind of collaboration and interaction that it takes to address complex issues like this. So that's a good thing. And then lastly, everyone's voice in this room matters. We would love to have everybody on the panel, but just logistically it becomes very difficult to do that. So how about we play it out this way, that we give the panel a chance to voice their views and thoughts, and then I will open it up to the audience periodically just to make sure you have a chance to interact and engage in, okay? So panel first, audience second. All right, that's good. So why don't we get acquainted with everybody here and kind of start over here, if you would, Robert. We'll let people know who you are and kind of how you're connected to this work, and we'll go from there.
Good morning, my name is Robert Neal. I'm a member of NAMI. I'm an advocate, and I'm a facilitator for Connection Recovery Group, and also I have a mental illness. My role is to speak about mental awareness and get it out, and hope people in the community can get more involved and be more aware of what's going on in the community.
Thanks, Robert.
Hi, my name is Luella Mahana. I am the director and co-founder of Integrity Counseling. Integrity Counseling actually started 2 years ago, March of 2014. We're a not-for-profit organization. We formed because we saw that there was a gap in mental health services for people who couldn't necessarily afford mental health, or were not being able to be served in some of the other facilities in town.
Hello, my name is Tasha Motz. I suffer from bipolar disorder, which is a serious mental illness. I also facilitate with Robert the Connections group with NAMI. It's a support group for those who do have mental illness. As well, right now I'm currently training for the crisis text line, and if you don't know what that is, please look it up. It is basically aimed more towards teens because they seem to be the ones that like to text. So with that in mind, I am getting trained for that. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Chris Mox. I'm Tasha's husband, which makes me her #1 support. And I'm here to hopefully share what my role is as a family member, being supportive with someone who has mental illness and the challenges that it can sometimes present as well.
Good morning, everybody. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Tricia Wood. I represent also family members who have helped somebody navigate their way through the health system as well as the judicial system here in McLean County. This forum is really exceptional because you hear voices from family members and people with the diagnosis itself, as well as our partners in the judicial system. So thanks everybody for being here.
Good morning, everybody. I'm William Yoder, Billy Yoder. I'm a judge here in McLean County. A little bit of a cold, so I sound a little bit deeper than I normally sound today. I preside over a misdemeanor courtroom currently. I also preside over our mental health court here in McLean County, which is a problem-solving court, a non-adversarial court, dealing with people that suffer from severe mental illness. So I'm also very pleased to be here this morning and looking forward to the discussion.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Colleen O'Connor, and I'm a mental health professional and a member of the National Alliance on Mental Illness. I graduated from Illinois Wesleyan University and then spent several years working in the field of substance abuse counseling, and now I work at Project Oz, one of our local agencies for empowering youth, where I'm a prevention education specialist, which means that I teach social and emotional life skills and drug prevention in the local middle schools. So I'm here to offer my opinion as someone who has seen both prevention and treatment of substance abuse, and to talk about why it's so important that we deal with mental illness early before it has to become a criminal issue, so that we can save ourselves from some pain and save ourselves unnecessary spending.
My name is Jason Chambers. I'm McLean County State's Attorney. A lot of the cases that we have going in the county have complex issues of mental health involved with them, both of the defendants or the victims. A lot of the times it's a situation where the best place for it to be handled probably would not be a criminal courtroom. However, we should be the last line of defense in some of those issues, but because of a lot of the stresses that we have in our system, some of the gaps that we have, we've kind of, in a lot of situations, become the front line of defense. And it's kind of an example I've used is we've MacGyvered it a little bit. We're using tools that aren't necessarily used for a certain task to try to figure out another way to do something.
Very good. So thank you all very much for that intro. So we've kind of bucketed this, and Ken referenced this earlier, into sort of support and education. We want to kind of focus there first, and then we want to move into law and justice and kind of pay attention to that particular area as well, and then later advocacy. So we've got three, sort of broken this down into three large buckets of what we want to talk about today. So why don't we start with support and education? That's the scripted part of the day, right? The rest of this is just us talking with each other and talking with you. So let's start with a question, though, about more current state versus what we'd like to see. Let's begin with what we already have. So here's my first question for the panel. What support and educational programs do we currently have available through your agencies for people with a mental health diagnosis and for their families as well? So anybody, go ahead and start. Go ahead, Tasha.
I'm speaking on behalf of NAMI right now. We do have a family-to-family group that is a actual class that has a 12-week session. And if you have somebody in your family who has mental illness, it's a program to help you learn to deal with what you're going through. As well as that, we have the family support group, which meets the second and fourth Saturday of every month. Along with that, there is the Connections support group. We have been very lucky that we have gotten a grant so that we can implement 2 new programs in our area. NAMI Basics will be coming shortly, and it's one of, the other one is one that goes into the teens, but I can't remember what it's called right now.
What's the Connections group about? Can you tell us more about that program?
Yeah, Connections group is for people with mental illness. They come and they find support. We have a set dialogue that we go through. It's a very safe and effective way to gain support. It's Incredible. The training that I received for it was so informative, and I am really proud to be a part of that and facilitate that.
Thank you, Tasha. Others?
Sure, I'd like to talk a little bit about integrity counseling and how we are trying to meet the needs of the people in McLean County. We are, as I said before, a non-for-profit organization. We currently receive donations from individuals and groups, and we don't have a set fee for services for clients. What we do is we meet with each client that comes to us, and we basically establish what an affordable amount for them could be to pay. We don't have a barrier, so if someone is not able to pay for whatever reason, we don't have a barrier to services for any reason.
How long has this been in play then for you? How long has this been going on in terms of your...
We formed as a not-for-profit in March of 2014. We opened our doors in April of 2014.
So it's relatively new. Others on this side?
All right, I'd like to speak as a representative of Project Dogs. So we are one of the agencies in town that works to support youth. And while our programs aren't specifically for people with mental illness, I believe very strongly that, well, most mental illnesses maybe can't be prevented, but if we can start young by teaching things like how to take care of yourself emotionally, how to deal with problems that come up in your life, how to cope with the stressors that we all experience, then people will have an easier time transitioning into adulthood. So we have programs like the Runaway Youth Program. We help young people who don't feel safe or welcome in their homes find a safe and welcoming home, whether it's their own or someone else's. We also have a transitional living program for young people who are trying to live independently and maybe don't yet have the skills to be able to survive in this world alone. We have a Young Mothers program for young mothers learning how to parent effectively when maybe they don't have the support that they really need. And the program that I work with is the prevention program. So what I do and what my coworkers do is we go into all of the local middle schools in this county and teach a program that's all about how do young people learn how to make good choices and recognize their emotions and communicate with people and build healthy relationships so that they don't end up feeling alone and like they have to turn to substances or violence. So the hope is that if we can start young and build these skills, then people have an outlet and they have support if they do find themselves coming up against mental illness.
Very good, thank you. So, when you think about what's in flight now, let's go ahead and stay in the support and education area. What would you like to see improved, or what would you like to see differently than the way it is as it stands now? You can start if you'd like.
Sure. I would love to see more involvement at a younger age. We do start at 5th grade, and that's wonderful. Most 5th graders are around 10 years old, but at the same time, there's a lot that can be done in the community for people who are under the age of 10 years old, because at the age of 10, a lot of young people have already dealt with issues that you wish that they wouldn't have to deal with until they were older, but that's the world that we live in. And I'm very excited about a new program that NAMI is starting called Ending the Silence, which aims to, yes, that's the name, and that aims to go into the middle schools and the high schools and spread the message of mental health awareness so that we can end the stigma. That's what we're looking to do, is because there's still such a huge stigma in our community about mental illness. We don't feel like it's safe to talk about. So then young people have no exposure and no ability to recognize those symptoms when they begin to emerge in themselves or in their friends and their loved ones. So we hope that by spreading that message, perhaps we can let people find help earlier, because I think the earlier people are able to find help, the better their chances are of avoiding the kind of negative consequences that we're going to be talking about today.
That's very good. Do you have more information on Ending the Silence? Or just anything else?
Yeah, the NAMI groups, all of them that I mentioned, there are flyers in the back that they are welcome to grab. When it comes to prevention, I would like to see something that lets people know what they really need to know if something were to happen to them in the law and justice system. My story is very rare. I ended up with a DUI for just medication, and that was from taking it and going into the car and driving. I take responsibility for that. At the time, I did not know my medications were that strong. The second time I got a DUI, I was on my way to work the next morning after I had taken my medication. So this was actually in Tazewell County instead of McLean County, and it would have been handled a lot differently here. But the story itself ends up with me spending 30 days in jail at Tazewell County and having a hard time actually getting my medication. So what I would like to see is like a class that when you get diagnosed with a mental illness, it teaches you things like what medications can do to you, what medications do you need to know most about, and also adding into that class the fact that they need to have an advocate on the outside with giving them power of attorney just over their health so that they can talk to the jails if you are in jail.
That's good. So let's come back to some of those, because you brought up some very important points about that whole experience that I want to come back to, if that's okay with you. So did you want to chime in, Robert, on this stuff?
My story is I have a mental illness. I suffer with bipolar, and every day is challenging, knowing what day you're going to have having this suffering with mental illness. And I just encourage people in the community to get involved as much as they can to know more about what's going on with NAMI and the mental illness, mental awareness, and that kind of thing.
Very good. So did you want to jump in real quick? Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's important that people understand that treatment for mental illness is not an exact science. Tasha pointed out that she didn't realize the extent of the effect that her medication is going to have. And what frequently happens to people who are dealing with these kinds of issues is that they go to the doctor, they get a prescription, and there are a myriad of possibilities for what that doctor will prescribe. And it may take months until a determination is made that that's an appropriate medication, or this really isn't cutting it and we need to try something else. And then you're back to square one. And you can literally go for years trying this medication or combination of medications before finally you look up and you find one that works for you. And all that time you have been trying to do the right thing, working as hard as you can to get well, stay well, cooperate with your doctor, and it just doesn't take. It's not that person's fault. And you need to know that for that roller coaster that they're on, it's a miserable place to be. But that's the way it is, because it's not an exact science. And only trial and error in far too many cases may give you the result that you're looking for.
Thank you, Ken. Go ahead.
I just want to point out, to expand on what Ken said, with medications, they may work for a while and they may be great for a while, but you do also have a chance of those medications not working again for you. Or you may be on a medication that can affect your liver. Even if it's the great medication that keeps you stable, sometimes you have to stop taking that medication because of your health in order to stay alive. So medications are so important, and it is just a fraction of what we have to do when we have bipolar disorder, because psychotherapy is also something that is completely needed in order to maintain a balance with bipolar.
So thank you guys. You're building out a more complete picture of what this is. So I do want to stay on that before we move on. Did you want to jump into this?
I do. So mental health conditions, there's a broad spectrum of different diagnoses. A lot of times somebody is in a crisis without even realizing what the diagnosis is and hasn't yet received a diagnosis. We have a lot of support and services here in the community, but it's not quite connecting with the people that are experiencing crisis. What I would like to see is community support of the no wrong door concept that was built into the McLean County Mental Health Action Plan, in which somebody in crisis can go anywhere to get help and not be turned away, and that they would be then connected with where they need to go to actually get the solutions. I would challenge all of you in the audience to think, imagine a time when you're experiencing symptoms in which you think you're going to die. Your bones are breaking and you feel like your heart is going to fail. And then somebody looks at you and tells you that you're crazy and that it's all in your head. You're going to resist that. You're not going to accept that. And so the education needs to be in place for people experiencing that crisis to realize that a mental health diagnosis is just like any other health diagnosis.
Thank you for that. Good. So, a little bit more before we move on to the next segment on common misunderstandings. I think you've shared some here that kind of builds out a more clear picture of what's going on here. But are there other misunderstandings that are commonly held about mental illness or somebody who has a mental health diagnosis? Anything else you want to share?
Basically, just to remove the stigma that is associated with mental illness. Like Tricia said, it's a physical illness as well. It's just like if you had diabetes. Every day we have to get up, we have to take all our medications. We have to make sure we take them on time. Some of us have medications that go all the way through the day, and at certain times you have to take those. So it's very important that you have a well-balanced plan.
Okay, so why don't we pause here.